Welcome, everybody. I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director of the Louisville Small Business Development Center. We are one of 17 centers in the Kentucky Small Business Development Center network. Glad to have you guys here today. I'd like to welcome my guest, Amanda Berry, to another Toolkit Tuesday. And today we're going to talk about how to investigate and buy a franchise. You know, franchising is a great way to get into business without having to figure things out on your own, because franchises kind of walk you through all the steps. Is that right, Amanda?
That is right. That is right. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Well, Amanda, I'm just going to let you jump right in here because this is such a great topic. Let's just not waste any time with me. So,
thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. And thank you to the SBDC for having me.
One other thing,
Sure.
folks, as you have it at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little toolbar. If you have any questions or comments, just click those in the chat. We'll be monitoring those, and then we'll be asking Amanda all those questions. So if you have questions, please put them in there and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Sorry about that.
No, that's important. Absolutely. Please let this be an interactive presentation today. I can give you guys all the knowledge that I have, but I'm more than happy to answer your individual questions as we go through this. So first and foremost, thank you to Dave and the SBDC for hosting me today. The SBDC has helped me personally in all of my various businesses. The resources that they have there are absolutely wonderful. They're free or mostly free, and they can really, really make the difference between you becoming a successful business owner and a was going to be successful business owner. So please, please, please utilize those SBDC resources. So again, as Dave said, my name is Amanda Berry, and today we're going to go over franchising. So this is me on the screen. Again, Amanda Berry. I actually own a franchise consultancy firm. It is called FranNet of Kentucky. I have owned this firm for about 5 years, although we've been in the Louisville area since 1994, so for quite a while. I have 10 years, before I owned this franchise, I had 10 years previous experience with the Veterans Benefits Administration. So in government, I used to help veterans get their benefits. And I always think that that's an interesting journey because my government experience in no way related to the franchise that I chose to go into. And that's one thing that we're going to talk about today is how to use your experience without it being an industry experience requirement. I also own multiple other businesses. So I am a franchise owner. I am also a startup owner, and I've also purchased an existing business. So if there is a way to go into business, I have done it. But my passion is absolutely franchising, and franchising had its moments, I think, during the pandemic. I know personally, as part of a franchise system, going through that, all those ups and downs, the closures, closed, open, all of the new regulations and all of the things that we all went through, I could not have done that alone. And having the support of my franchisor to help me with that was incredibly helpful. And then, of course, having my resources at the SBDC. So it's an interesting time to be in franchising. I think it's also an exciting time. So who is FranNet? What does FranNet even do? We are a 30-year-old franchise consultancy firm. So I like to call us the eHarmony or the Match.com of the business world. We take people who are looking to investigate a franchise, put them through a profiling system, build their business model, and then introduce them to franchises that fit their model and what they want to accomplish. So you can either swipe left or right on that franchise system as we investigate them together. So again, we match prospective franchisees with franchisors that are looking for an owner. We pre-screen all the franchises that we personally work with to make sure that they are good franchises. Not every franchise is good. If you're on this presentation, you've probably done a few Google searches already on franchises to buy, and been very overwhelmed with all the results. There are 4,000 franchises out there in over 90 industries. The options are numerous. How you weed through those and find one that's right for you and an industry and a system that is successful for you can be pretty daunting, and that's actually what we help you with. The best part is, just like the SBDC, our services are 100% free as well. So we will talk more about that at the end of this presentation, and if I can be someone that helps you through that process. So today, though, what we are going to talk about is how to investigate and buy a franchise. I know that's a pretty broad, pretty vague topic, but there are a couple of things that I think that you could take away from this presentation to at least get you started thinking about, is this a path I want to go down? One, we're going to start out with what is a franchise? What does that even mean? I'm sure, like most people, you hear franchising and you think McDonald's or Subway, some sort of fast food. It's much more than that, and we're going to talk about it. Two, we're going to talk about what is an FGD, or a franchise disclosure document. This is a legal document that every franchisor has, and it has a lot of information. We're going to go through it at a very high level. And then 3, what I like to call the meat of this particular meat and potatoes of this presentation is going to be the top 10 franchise mistakes and how to avoid them. I've been in this industry a long time. My mentor was in this industry for over 30 years, and we've learned the hard way a few things that you probably want to avoid when doing franchise research. So we'll go over the top 10 things that we've learned. We will also go over how to build your personal business model, additional resources that you can use in the next steps. If this is something you think you want to pursue, there are a ton of resources, especially in the city of Louisville. This is a very entrepreneur-friendly place to be, personally, I think. And there's definitely some resources that you can utilize to help you on your journey. Okay, so let's start with what is a franchise. At its essence, yes, McDonald's is a franchise. Yes, Subway is a franchise. But really, what the term franchising means is you get a license to use a name, a trademark, and products in a system in exchange for a franchise fee and ongoing royalties. Almost a business in a box. It is a plan, it is a rule book, it is a blueprint of how to move forward, and then the resources you need to implement that plan successfully. It's a really interesting model. It's almost a partnership type of relationship that you have with that franchisor, but make no mistake about it, the business is yours. The success or failure of that business is up to you. That is a true franchise model. You get the system, but you have to have the skill set to implement. I always like to throw this slide out there because if you're looking at franchise ownership, you might also be looking at the other options. Just a few kind of advantages and disadvantages into going in a franchise system. You should know a franchise is not built for everyone. Not everyone should use a franchise model. Knowing you and your personal growth and your goals and your skill set can be really helpful to deciding if a franchise model is going to work for you. A couple of advantages of going into a franchise, probably the biggest one that we all hear is instant trademark or name recognition. Doesn't necessarily mean that the general population might recognize that trademark or name. Some franchises, other businesses may be the customer. There's a lot of franchises that are in the B2B world that you as an individual consumer may have never heard of. That doesn't mean they're unknown. Okay, there's a difference. You definitely have a proven system. Franchises have gone through a specific series of tests and trials and tribulations to get where they are. They know what needs to be done to be successful. So that's nice. A lower failure rate, definitely a lower failure rate in franchising as opposed to startups. Lower cost, that's a bit misleading. It can definitely be a lower cost than saying buying an existing business. But if you were to start something from scratch, that could almost cost you nothing. So cost is relative here compared to what your options are. The good news is there are a lot of financing options when it comes to franchising, and that's something that the SBDC can absolutely help you with. Is how to find funding, and we're going to talk about how to find funding for your franchise business as well. Banks like franchising, because again, it is a proven model, it's a proven system. They just have to think that the bank just has to take a bet that you know how to run that proven system. They already know that the concept itself probably works. Some disadvantages. So there are some fewer industry options. Certain industries just don't work well in franchising. Manufacturing is probably the best example of that. And we'll kind of get into a little bit of the why with that in a minute. There are some territory restrictions, which obviously can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you have a territory, it's in your franchise contract, that's great, that's yours, it's your protected territory. You necessarily can't go outside of that territory, but no one else can come into it either. That's a little bit of a pro and a con. Can only sell their products. That's probably a big one. Does McDonald's have the ability to make a pizza? Sure, they do. They have the equipment. They probably have the know-how. Do they though? No, they don't, because that's not what McDonald's does. So there are some restrictions around what you can sell and what you can do. And you also have this is in the disadvantage column, the ongoing royalty payments. That to me is only a disadvantage if you don't like what you get for your royalty payments. If you have gone this far into the research process with franchising, you probably know you have to pay royalties, usually on your gross profits or your gross sales. So A good franchise only makes money when you make money. So that franchisor is very vested in your success. And for those royalty payments, you have to know what you're getting for it. Are you getting a call center to help you with call volume? Are you getting marketing and branding? Are you getting someone that takes care of all of your website development? What is it that you get for those ongoing royalties? And that needs to be part of your research. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well in the next coming slides. And that is something I can absolutely help you with, break down for you. What do I get from what is the royalty payment? What do I get for it? Can I do this cheaper, better, faster on my own? Or does it make sense to have the support of the franchisor? That's a really, really big question to answer when you're doing your investigation. So just to reiterate, a franchise is a system, and the franchise model essentially creates a distribution channel to build a brand identity very quickly. So when you purchase into a franchise, what you're really purchasing into is time. You should get where you want to go much quicker in a franchise system than if you try to do it on your own. And if that particular sentence doesn't resonate with the franchise you're looking at, it's probably not going to be something that a good fit for you. So think about it like that. All right, before I jump into the FDD, are there any questions about just my very quick overview of what a franchise system is? No. All right. I will assume that we are all good there and we'll move on.
Yep, all good.
Thanks, Dave. So let's get to item number 2, the franchise disclosure document. This particular item this is a whole 4-hour class in and of itself. And in fact, I teach a lot about the franchise disclosure document at various universities here in the city. The franchise disclosure document is interesting. Prior to the 70s, anyone could kind of hang a sign out their door and say, we're a franchise. Buy into us, make $1 million, your life will be wonderful. And things didn't go so well for a lot of people. And that's when the federal government stepped in and the Federal Trade Commission created what's called the franchise disclosure document. They said, whoa. If you're going to call yourself a franchise and you're going to bring franchisees into your system, there has to be a level of disclosure. There has to be some information that they get before they buy into the system. And that now comes in the form of what's called a franchise disclosure document, or an FDD. Every franchisor has to have one. There are 23 items. 22 of those 23 items are mandatory. They have to be present in this franchise disclosure document. And they range from 100 to 400 pages long, depending on how old the system is and how long they've been around, because it is a lot of information. So there are various items that you will find in every franchise disclosure document: the information about the franchisor, how long that CEO of that company has been in business, what have they done before, what's their resume, right? That can help you with risk assessment. The franchise might be a newer concept, but has that franchisor been successful in other systems that they've managed or produced? That's information you want to know. Oh, I know. How about the cost? How much does it cost to go into business? Not just the franchise fee, but the total investment. I think that's something that a lot of us will overlook sometimes. We think, oh, I just have to pay the franchise fee and figure out the rest. That's not true. You need capital to cover everything you need, not only to pay your franchise fee, but to build a building if that's what your franchise calls for, to do marketing, to hire people, maybe even to pay yourself if you're going to be working in this business, which you absolutely should. So all kinds of information can be found in that franchise disclosure document, including the total cost, on average, that the franchisor thinks is going to cost you to open your doors and run your business. An example of a franchise contract will be in that FDD. That's very important. Kind of what are your responsibilities and what are my responsibilities? That will be laid out in that document. As you can see here, obligations for the franchisor and the franchisee. What is your obligation as a franchisee, right? To open and run the business. What is the franchisor's obligation? Do they have specific things that they have to meet? And they all should. Training would be a big one. That's why you're buying into the system. Your territory. Probably my favorite part of the franchise disclosure document is called item 20. And that is a list of all contact information for current and former franchise owners in that system. And that is a wealth of information. So anyone who currently owns that franchise or has owned it in the past will be listed in this document with their contact information. And part of what I do when I work with clients is let's go through that list and let's call some people and let's ask them how it's going. How to investigate a franchise really comes down to how do you ask the right questions of the current and prior owners to get the information you need to make the best decision for you. This is the only system I know of that allows you to do this level of granular research into a business before you ever spend a dime buying it. They will also have financial statements in this document. We call that an item 19. You will hear that terminology thrown around in the franchising world. What's your item 19? Do you have an item 19? How's your item 19? Item 19 is the financial results that the franchisor can publish. They can choose which financial results they include. It can be their flagship store and their P&L statements for that store. It could be an aggregate of all of their franchisees. They can decide how to present the item 19, but they have to tell you what it is. So they have to tell you, here's our top 25 stores and what they grossed last year. They can absolutely tell you that information, but only in this item 19. And we're going to come back to that point because it is very important, because everyone wants to immediately jump to item 19. How much money can I make in this franchise? And while that information has to be presented based on real data, based on real returns, it is a point in time, and sometimes it's going to be the best of the best, right? So we have to take that with a grain of salt whenever we're investigating a franchise. It'll have a bunch of other information in there. The most important thing is this document has to exist for every franchise that you investigate. And legally, the franchisor must give you this document. And you have to have it for 14 calendar days before you're allowed to legally purchase a franchise. They take franchise disclosure documents very, very seriously. And in fact, if you've been through any of the research process yet with a franchise, and if you've seen one of these, you probably had to sign for receipt of it. You're not signing saying you're going to buy that franchise. You just the franchisor just has to prove that they gave you this document. These documents are also updated once a year, and we're coming up into what I call FDD season. So March and April timeframe is when most franchisors will send in their updated documents. This is also interesting because this is also when they may raise that franchise fee. A franchise fee, what the cost of the franchise fee is stagnant, it's steady, it cannot be changed unless a new franchise disclosure document is updated. So most franchisors, their franchise fee is good only for the year, and that year usually only runs from April to March. And once that FDD has been updated, that's the time when they will look across their system, figure out have their costs of goods gone up or down, and they will adjust their franchise fee accordingly. So something to be aware of is there is a certain time limit to that total initial investment, depending on what time of year you're investigating your franchise. Probably my favorite part, the due diligence part. Like I said, the franchise disclosure document has the name and contact information for every current and former franchise owner in that system. And they will absolutely let you know how they're doing. If you can get them on the phone, if you can get them to answer some questions via email, you will hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. You will hear from people who say that this is the best franchise system in the world and it's been wonderful. And you will hear from people that say, I wish I had never done this. Your job is to find all of them and ask them all of the questions that you need to make the best decision for you. And if that's something that's a little intimidating to you, or it's something that you kind of don't know where to get started, I'm more than happy to help you with that, as is anyone in the SCBC. All right, so now we've gone through one and two of our agenda items. The third one is probably my favorite. It's the 10 big franchise mistakes to avoid. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, take away these 10 things. These were hard-fought, hard-won lessons that myself, my business partner of 30 years, have realized throughout all of our franchise research, both as franchise consultants and franchise owners. We've both owned multiple franchises. And these 10 things tend to be it. This is what you need to know. All right. Mistake number one. And I see this one probably the most. People like to choose a franchise business because they love the product or service. That happens. That's probably the first thing you thought of. I don't know how many clients I get to say, oh, I love Chick-fil-A. I want to own a Chick-fil-A. I love Jimmy John's. I want to own a Jimmy John's. Okay. Love the product all you want. I love to go to Jimmy John's for lunch all the time. The product is great. Nothing against Jimmy John's. They're great. I had some earlier today. And there's a line out the door every day. When I hear there's a line out the door every day at that restaurant, immediately what I think from the business side of things is, well, do they have a staffing issue? Why is there a line out the door? Is the owner the one back there slapping mustard and mayonnaise on the bread? What's going on here? A line is fine, but a long line that's slow, that's not good business. What's going on? Don't choose a franchise because you love the product or service. That's a very easy trap to fall into. What you should do instead, and what we recommend, is that you choose a business because you possess the particular skill set required to make that business succeed. So great if you want to own a sandwich shop, if that is your jam and you love sandwiches, but you also are really good at managing a workforce that has a high turnover rate. You know how to staff 7 days a week, very long hours, and you know how to manage that type of business model, then that's a great business for you. But think about it from the particular business skills needed to make it successful. That's number one. Number two, make sure you can afford it. A lot of businesses go under because they're undercapitalized. They were so close to success that they just couldn't get there because they ran out of money. Don't let that happen to you. And then does owning that particular business give you the outcomes that you want? So example, a lot of my clients come to me and they say, I'm so tired of working 7 days a week. I want a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job. I want more quality time with my family. I traveled a lot with my other business. I want to be home with my job. I want to be home on the weekends to be with my family. That needs to be part of what you consider your success matrix. Because if you want to go into retail or fast food, having normal, sane hours is not going to be, it's just not part of the model. And you need to know that going in. So what do you want out of the business? Mistake number two, this kind of goes along with I love the product. So mistake number two, I'm only going to look at businesses or franchise options that are in the industry where I have experience. I get this a lot. I'm in IT. I'm only going to consider IT related franchises. You are more than your industry. That is a big mistake I think people make, and not even just a mistake. I think it's a limiting factor. I think if you start to only look in a specific industry, you can really miss out on something that could be an amazing opportunity for you. So think about it not from an industry perspective, but from a successful skill set perspective. So a fun little franchising fact, less than 25% of franchisees are in the same industry that they were employed. That means over 75% of us franchise owners are in industries where we had zero experience prior to going into it. Myself as an example, I was in government. I helped assess benefits for veterans. Had no idea about franchising until I became a franchise owner. Now I'm immersed in this world. I've learned all the things. My franchisor has taught me a lot, and I've been able to use those same skill sets I've learned in government and transfer them over here. But if you had asked me 10 years ago if this is what I'd be doing, absolutely not. It's just that those things are not necessarily related. Successful business owners, they separate the function of the business from the function of the owner. The what is not nearly as important as the how. Probably one of our successful franchisees here, you may have heard of Meineke before, right? Meineke deals with cars. Those people are not automotive experts. The franchise owners in a Meineke are not proficient at automobiles. What they are good at is actively marketing the business, right? And staffing and hiring and HR. Those are their skill sets, right? It's kind of the difference of, I know how to drive a car, but I don't need to be a mechanic to know how to drive a car. Same thing in franchising world. You can own different franchise businesses and industries where you had no prior experience, but you can be taught. Very important. All right, mistake number three. The business has to fit my personality. I have to be passionate about it if I am to succeed. Okay. Passion can certainly be your friend. And you know, the top 20%, you usually have a passion for business, not necessarily the widget, not necessarily the thing that you're selling. Your most successful business owners are passionate about the business part of it. Personality, we actually put our clients through a personality assessment. It helps us determine if you have certain tendencies to lean one way or the other, which can make you more successful, but it's not the end all be all. And I will give you an example here. Dry cleaning. That doesn't sound like a very appealing business on the surface at all. It's hot, it's boring, right? It's dirty work. You're literally doing other people's dirty laundry. But if you look at it from what the business owner is, right? It's simple. Dry cleaning is not rocket science. It's easy to train your employees on how to work in that particular business. The cash business, there's no receivables here. Your inventory is water and soap and plastic bags. So it's not a lot of overhead going on there. And you provide great service to clients, and they come back again and again and again and again. I use one particular dry cleaner. It's close to my house. They do a great job. I look great whenever I'm allowed to go out in public and we're not in the middle of a lockdown, right? The best part is the owner doesn't have to be there all the time. That particular type of business is a part-time business for the owner. So it's really about not necessarily passionate about the widget, not passionate about what it is that you're necessarily doing, but passionate about the business part of it. Does that get you up in the morning? And that's what I would highly recommend that you concentrate on. Then something also to consider, sometimes we have to look at a business as a means to an end. It's a vehicle for delivering you to your end destination. And in fact, I would because of all the choices out there, I would absolutely advise that you kind of reverse engineer this when you're looking at franchise ownership. What do you want to accomplish with this business? What is it that you want out of it? Is it a particular income level? Is it, maybe it's a legacy for your kids, something for them to work in one day. What is it that you want? Is it you want time back? You're tired of have someone else calling the shots, so you want a business where you call the shots. Okay, great. Let's start there first and work our way backwards. Successful franchise owners are passionate about achieving their goals. They're passionate about success. And that's really, I think, a very strategic, successful strategy. Mistake number 4. I might leave you guys with this one, or a few of you anyway. I'll reduce my risk by going into business with a partner. That can be a mistake. Know what you're doing. Splitting expenses and labor sounds great, but nothing keeps you up at night as much as a bad partnership. 2 families writing checks from the same checkbook, because that's what's happening, can be difficult. We actually have a saying in the franchise industry: there are 2 ships to avoid, a sinking ship and a partnership. Not to say that partnerships can't happen. I have very successful business partnerships, but go into it knowing what you're doing. A success strategy for this one, if you are going to go into a partnership with someone, and this goes for anything, not just for a franchise, but for business in general, document, document, document. Set up documentation before you even start looking at businesses. What is going to happen to your business partner in the event of a death, a disability, or a divorce? Like one of the 3 Ds. Who's going to be responsible? Make sure that you have buy-sell agreements. Make sure that those buy-sell agreements are funded. Usually this is in a way of like a life insurance policy or disability policy. What happens if you need to do a capital call in the future? Sometimes that happens where you're in a place for your business where the partners have to inject cash to get them through a hard time. Have that as part of your partnership agreement. Remember the golden rule. So I think we were all taught the golden rule is, treat others as you would like to be treated. In business, the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. So make sure that these things are written down in black and white, and that they're funded. You don't ever want to have to make a decision related to a bad partnership or a breakup in a partnership or something that happens. But if you do, you are going to thank your future self for having those things written out and an operating agreement in place. Unexpected things happen. Do it now, not when you need it. Okay, mistake number 5. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning of this presentation. Relying on the item 19, the FDD for earnings representations. The item 19, again, if you remember, that's where the franchisor can tell you essentially how much money you're going to make. That is a point in time. Remember, these franchise disclosure documents are only updated once a year. So it's a point in time. You need to validate this information with the owners in that system. This is just a data point. So what we always say is, one, obtain some sort of template from the franchisor if they will give it to you, some sort of P&L template or expense template. They can't give you one that's already filled out necessarily. That's against FTC rules, but they can give you a blank template, and you can use that to collect all the real world financial information you need from the franchisees that are doing the job. And I say this is because this is very important. Again, the FDD is one point in time, right? It can also be heavily skewed sometimes. So the FDDs now that you're reading have data from 2020 in it, right? Which was the beginning of the pandemic. Some businesses did not do so well. That's an anomaly in their system. They've been great for 30 years. In the last 18 months, maybe not so much. That will be reflected in their item 19. But how would you know that that is a normal year without speaking to the franchise owners that have been in that system 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Same can be said the other way around. I've had clients that I put into business whose business flourished during the pandemic, who saw growth that they had not seen in their franchise system ever. If you were to get that FDD and look at it, you would say, hey, oh man, I could absolutely hit my goals with this franchise. Maybe, maybe not. How often are we going to go through a pandemic, right? You have to look at it from the positive and the negative. It can negatively affect your business, but it can also positively affect these businesses. Without further investigation into what is in those item 19 representations, it can be a little misleading. So just, again, use that as a data point, as a starting point to further investigate and research into what it can mean for you. Mistake number 6, misjudging how much working capital you really need. Okay, this can be very important. You have to figure out how much money you need to get this business up and running and profitable. If you go back to that franchise disclosure document, I told you that one of the items that they have, it's called item 7, one of the items that they have to give you is how much money they think it's going to cost you to open your doors and run your business. It's usually only for 3 months. The FTC rules indicates that the franchisor has to tell you initial investment costs to open your doors and run your business for 3 months. Well, what if it takes more than 3 months to get to profitability? What if that's the average in the system is 6 months, 9 months? You need to know that going in, and you need to plan for how much capital you need. I know this is a little bit of a downer and it can be a little overwhelming, but trust me, you want to know now rather than when you're in the middle of your business and you all of a sudden run out of capital and you need to figure out what to do next. Don't put yourself into that position. So what we recommend is make sure you have enough reserve to cover your personal living expenses. Yes, you can do that with your loan for 6 to 12 months. To also cover your debt service. Going into debt isn't necessarily bad when there's leveraged, what I consider leveraged money. If you're investing in yourself, debt can be smart. You just have to know how much you can personally afford. And then always roll your debt service payments into your operating expenses. That should be part of your planning. Operating needs and operational needs and for the unexpected. Again, you don't have to figure this out on your own. You can ask current franchisees. You can absolutely ask the Small Business Development Center coaches. They are phenomenal at helping you figure out your cash flow projections, especially for lending. They helped me several times. There's plenty of free resources, especially in the city online, that can help you figure this part out. But it's a very important step to figure out. And that's really for any business. On the flip side, mistake number 7, borrowing too much and suffocating in debt. So there's a balance here between borrowing enough and borrowing too much. This can require a lot of in-depth conversation with your coach on where is that sweet spot. And there's absolutely a sweet spot. And it's not a guess. It's a pretty calculated thing that we can do whenever we look at, okay, how much money does the average person cost? What do you think you can do? What is the average for the city or the state or this area or this territory? it can be very, very accurate. Use those professionals to help you. And again, most of these professionals are free that can help you with this. Dave in SBDC here that's hosting today is phenomenal at this one. So again, success strategy, have the proper capital structure in place, and do know that in today's market, especially if you're going for a loan, you probably need 30 to 50% owner equity somehow, some way. We can talk about strategies for that. There's way more funding strategies that are available that you may not know about, but some of them are also myths. So use an expert to help you navigate. Mistake number 8, viewing franchise ownership as a short-term endeavor. This is not a short-term deal. I have friends that kind of do wholesale business flipping where they buy distressed business, they work on it for a couple of years, they flip it, they sell it, almost like you flip a house. That is not what a franchise is. Franchise is not necessarily a short-term endeavor. I will advise my clients to view franchise ownership as a 5-year plan. Okay. Where work it for 5 years, assume that you're going to be part of the system for 5 years, whether that's part-time or full-time. That can depend on the structure. You can be a semi-absentee owner or a full owner operator, but you will be part of this franchise for 5 years, mostly. Because if you go to any business, you go to find a buyer for that business when you're thinking about your exit strategy. It can take up to 2 years to find the right buyer, especially if you have a specific asking price. So just whenever you plan for franchise ownership, plan for it to be a long-term investment. This is not Bitcoin, which can go up and down depending on the day. This is definitely a longer-term investment. Number 9, if I could bold this one anymore, I would. Hiring the wrong kind of attorney or no attorney at all is a major, major mistake when you are investigating franchise ownership. Okay, we've all become very accustomed to clicking that little checkbox and saying, I agree to terms and conditions. And we all know you did not read the terms and conditions. Don't do that on a franchise contract. I strongly recommend using an attorney to review a franchise agreement for you, not the franchise disclosure document, although they can help you with that. I can help you with that. But the franchise agreement, the thing that you are going to sign, that needs to be reviewed by a franchise attorney, and it needs to be reviewed by someone who has expertise in franchise law. You would not hire your corporate lawyer or your estate planning attorney to handle your traffic tickets or your divorce, right? You need to use the right expert. A franchise attorney knows the ins and outs. They can give you changes. They can write in more protection for you. They can negotiate sometimes on your behalf. It's not typically terribly expensive to engage a franchise attorney. I'm usually between $1,000 to $1,500 to have them review your contract or negotiate on your behalf. That is the best money you will ever spend. So while my services are free, while a CDC services are free, attorneys do cost money. This is the best money that you will spend. One of my clients recently said to me, there's nothing more expensive than cheap. And if you can shave off costs in other areas, that's great. Don't let it be with your legal team or your accounting team. Those are 2 areas that you definitely want to pay for quality. If you need recommendations on franchise attorneys here locally or wherever you're at, please reach out to me. I have a very broad network. These are people I've actually trusted and who have reviewed my own business contracts for me personally. Mistake number 10, not including your spouse in the decision process from day one. So if you have a spouse, if you are part of a domestic partnership, include your partner from day one, even if they have nothing to do with the business. In my experience, every small business is a family business. It just is. Even if you're not involved, it impacts them, right? That money is coming out of your joint checking or your time. Your time is going to be taken away by this business. I highly encourage your spouse or your partner to attend all the meetings that you are attending, especially when you start to go through the franchise research, because the last thing you want to happen, and I've seen this happen, and it can cause mass confusion, is I'm the one investigating the franchise. I'm the one speaking to the franchisor and the franchisees. And I turn around and I'm just telling my spouse about it or my partner about it. And now we're playing a game of telephone. Spouse might ask me questions that I never even considered, right? Like they're my life partner. and they probably are thinking of things that I've never even thought of. And now you have to be the one that defends what the franchisor told you, even though maybe you don't really remember what the franchisor told you, and it can be messy. So please involve those people in the very beginning. My husband was involved in my research process. He has nothing to do with any of my businesses. He is not an entrepreneur. He is a 9-to-5 W-2 employee, and he likes it that way. We do not work together in the business. I would probably murder him if we did. We do not have that type of relationship, but he was there from day one to help, also just to help me to ask questions that I didn't even consider. So again, every business is a family business. All right, I'm going to stop before we go on to steps 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, I think at this point. Any questions about the different mistakes or the different things we've just talked about?
No, not any questions from the audience, but I like what you said about the family business, though, because as an entrepreneur, you're willing to take risk. That doesn't mean your family's willing to take that risk.
That is absolutely true. And a lot of people just think it's a money risk, but it's not. It can be a reputation risk. It can be a risk of time away from family to set this business up. We all have to be in agreement about at least what we're doing moving forward.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so how do you build your personal business model? I know this is a lot of information I'm throwing at you all. Hopefully, if you're watching it now, you're able to absorb some of it as you're probably listening to us on your lunch break. If you go back and watch it later, I think we'll be able to send you the recording out. Real quickly, how do you build a business model? I would absolutely encourage you to build a business model first. That is probably success number 1. Build your business model first, not your business plan. That's the super detailed, really long 15, 20 page document that the banks need, that the SBDC will certainly help you with. But your business model, what are your preferences? Because as you probably realize, there are thousands of franchise options out there. Don't look at every one of them. Let's just look at the ones that match your preferences. So remember what I said about you, if you want work-life balance, I would not suggest you go into a business that's open 7 days a week. That doesn't jive, that doesn't compute. So create your business model first. And this can be very high level, just gives you a good starting point. So I would suggest, first of all, make a list. What are 5 specific goals you must have for your future company that are non-negotiable? Okay, think about it from the perspective of what you want. So for example, a business must be a sales and marketing driven business. Okay, maybe if you're not even at that level yet, maybe if you're just, I need to be able to spend part of my day outside. Sometimes your non-negotiables can be things that you don't want, right? Sometimes it's a little easier to think about, not necessarily what we do want. It's like, I don't know what I want. I know what I don't want. If you were someone that does not want to be at a desk, make that a non-negotiable. Do not want to be behind a computer, okay? Or you want to be able to work remotely. I love to travel. I need to be able to have a business that I can operate it remotely if I need to. You might not have 5 things, but start there. Let's start somewhere. Consider your preferences. Number 2, for the nuts and bolts. How many employees do you want? If you want employees at all, part-time, full-time. Would you hire high school students? That's an employee group, right? Is that something that you're willing to take on? Do you want to have a service or you want to have a product? Do you want to provide people with something that through knowledge, or do you want to provide your customer something through an actual thing, a product that they buy and sell? Type of customer, type of industry, budget. I'll go back up to type of industry. Sometimes it's hard for us to figure out what type of industry we want to be a part of because we may have just came from one industry that we've always known. Sometimes when you're thinking about type of industry, I also tell my clients again, think about the industries you know you don't want to be a part of. So if food is not something you're interested in, you do not want to be part of the quick service restaurant scene, write that down. Do not want to be in food, okay? That'll eliminate looking at businesses that you don't even need to consider. A few other things. 3, what are your transferable skills? Let's talk about what your skill set is. Not necessarily where you have the industry experience, but what skills did you master within that industry? Was it management, sales? Are you really, really good at sales? A lot of people are good at sales and they don't even know it. Maybe leadership is your thing. Maybe you really enjoy mentoring other people. Maybe it's time management. Maybe it's money management. Are you the one with the spreadsheets and counting dollars and cents and trying to figure out where the next good deal is coming from? That's money management. Are you a great networker? Are you someone who's never met a stranger? That's a skill, believe it or not. So what are your transferable skills? Or figure out your funding options. Before you even look at a business, how are you going to pay for it? And just say, I'm going to get a loan. That's a little vague. Let's think about, well, what kind of loan do I think I can get? What do I need to apply for? What available products are out there? There's a bunch of loan packaging out there. There's the small business loans. There's a great process called the 401k or IRA rollover. That is where you can use your retirement funds to purchase a business. It's not a loan and it's not a taxable event. It's a whole process. I can certainly tell you more about that, and so can the SBDC. It's a phenomenal loan package, or it's a phenomenal funding option if you have the right qualifications for it. So figure out where your funding is coming from. Use an expert to help you. Okay, work with the Small Business Development Center coach. Their website is here on this PowerPoint. It's LouisvilleSmallBusiness.com. They're phenomenal there. Absolutely phenomenal. They can help you with any part of this that is overwhelming or uncomfortable for you. They can help talk you through it. They do this every day. You're probably only doing this once, twice, 3 times in your life. You work with a franchise consultant, shameless plug, that's me. I'm more than happy to help you through this process. I act as a coach and a guide, and to help make sure that you have all of these things kind of laid out in front of you so you can make the right decision for you and your family. And then the third bullet point here, take advantage of the free assessments to help you. So here's the fun part, and it's probably the best part of my job, I think. It's my fun part. We work with SBDC on this. We have what's called an entrepreneur profile. Maybe you're like, Amanda, all of this sounds great, but I don't know necessarily what my skill set is. I think I do, but I really don't know. We have a great assessment that'll help you figure that out. So if you are online now or you're watching this later, you can scan that little QR code in the top corner. Pre-pandemic, I had to tell everyone what a QR code is. I think we've all figured out how to use QR codes now. Scan that. That'll take you to an online assessment called our entrepreneur profile. It's free. It takes about 30 minutes to fill out. You immediately get your results emailed to you, and it can help you understand what is your skill set, what your personality type is, which you probably know that, right? You probably know, you've probably taken these assessments before, the DISC assessment, things like that. But this even goes further. How do those two things, how do your personality traits and your skill sets translate into business structures that are best suited for you? It's quite an interesting profile. And sometimes we figure out maybe business ownership isn't right for you. Or maybe franchise ownership isn't right for you, but startup business ownership is. Or maybe we need to look at a different model, or we just need to find a different path forward. Learn and figure that out now before you spend money. It will help you down the road be very organized about and very intentional about how you proceed in the world of business ownership. So if you want to scan that, feel free. I think we'll also send you the link out at the end with this recording. We'll get it to you, or if you want to kind of peruse later, you can absolutely go to FranNet.com, look around, you can see the assessment there. Or your SBDC coach can absolutely point you in the right direction. Additional resources, use professional advisors. They're professional advisors for a reason. Franchise attorney, accountants, SBDC coach. These are all phenomenal people. If you don't know where to find any of them, ask me, ask your coach. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction to resources that we utilize and trust. Suggested reading. These are great. More than just French fries. Talks about franchising in particular. The E-Myth Revisited is a great book, and Street Smart Franchising. These books can also be found for free download on my website at FranNet.com if you are interested in getting like the PDF version. So you can take a look at it and see how, if it speaks to you. I always try to read the free versions first, and if I really like it, I'll go buy the book so I can make all the notes in the margins. That's just how I operate. So I think that's it on my behalf. I know I have talked and talked and talked for a good 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes now. So I'm going to stop talking. Are there any questions or anything I can do for you?
So I do have a couple questions, especially about the due diligence period, that you can, like contact all the franchisees that are listed in the franchise disclosure document. So especially for folks that maybe wouldn't be too comfortable, or maybe it's their first time kind of doing this, what are some good questions to ask? And how would you, is there like a template, or walk somebody that knows nothing through that process? I mean, it's easy to say, just call them up and ask them questions, but what if I don't even know what to ask,
Exactly. Yes. So we actually have questions that we recommend that you ask. The franchisor may even give you some questions to ask throughout the process as well. So, hey, you might want to ask this about our franchise owners. Let's figure out what's important to you. My favorite question is probably, how long have you been in this franchise? Do you like it? Would you do this again? That's a very revealing question. Mm-hmm. Would you purchase into this franchise again? And there's a variety of questions to deal with. We talked about how much money does it really cost you to get this business up and running? Hey, franchise owner, here's what it says in item 19. I need X amount of money. Was that your experience? It's a nice way to ask them a money question without being overtly direct, but there are plenty of ways to ask these very important questions. And if you need help, I'm more than willing to help you and give you all kinds of, email me, I'll give you the templates that we use to go through that process.
And for the most part, are these franchise owners, are they receptive to people calling them?
Yes, a lot of them are. I also have a template on how to reach out to them. And, some people say, well, wouldn't you be, if you were part of a franchise system and someone was thinking about being part of it, most of us would also want to give others that advice, whether it's good or bad, whether it's run away or no, this is the greatest place on earth. But we can certainly help you with that. And a good franchise system will also help. So some of our bigger franchise systems will, sometimes they'll give you a list of people, blind list, and say, here, call anybody on this list. They validate for us all the time, or it can be really nice because part of when we go through the validation process is to try to match you with people that are like you and markets similar to yours. Mm-hmm. So that particular oil change place might work in, Kansas, but does it work in New York City? Not a lot of people are actually driving, right? So where are you? Where do you want to open your business? And can we connect you with people that are going to be similar? Because they're the people that are going to give you the best real world examples.
Mm-hmm. Nice, thank you. Mm-hmm. So here's another question. When you borrow money, do you have to have a minimum amount on your side, or can you borrow all the capital from the bank? If so, what possibilities are there have been approved, or what other tips do you have?
I have not, and Dave, you may be able to answer this question too. I have not ever seen being able to borrow 100% of what you need. Would you lend money to someone without some sort of guarantee? That's what you would be asking a bank to do. You do need something down, whether that's collateral that you sign over, whether that's a cash injection. Some banks are flexible depending on what you have, and we can certainly work with you if you have, need specific funding needs, but that's going to be very individualized and not generally what I see.
So each franchise probably has relationships with certain lenders that they could refer you to. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And is that a good way to go, or should you, strike out on your own to try to find something?
I personally would suggest that you kind of look on your own at the same time, because whenever you're going through franchise research, this is kind of the thin line you have to walk. You could walk into a franchise office tomorrow and say, I want to own a Jimmy John's franchise. I have all the money in my bank account. I'll write you a check today. The franchisor does not have to approve you. If they don't think that you are going to make their system work, if they don't think you're going to be successful and use their name in a successful way, they won't sell you the franchise. So a little bit of it is you want to look as best as possible before you start investigating that franchise, the franchisor, so that you have a really good chance of being approved. 99% of the clients I work with are approved to purchase a franchise. Every once in a while, one or two are not, and it never has to do with funding. It usually has to do with some sort of other issue. So I always suggest let's look at your funding options first, because that might actually help us decide what our business model criteria is and which franchises we look at.
Right. Well, that's great. And is there, in the funding, back to the earlier question I had about the, the due diligence, are there ways to determine without just calling up franchisees whether the franchise is a good one, or is it failing, or they're having problems? I mean, is there a way to quickly, vet one out before I move and start calling all kinds of people?
So use a consultant. Sorry, that's a shameless plug. Franchising world is very small. We know the good ones and the bad ones. We can tell you pretty quickly.
Okay.
We can tell you pretty quickly.
There's
There's also, yeah, for sure. There's also the International Franchise Association, IFA.org. I do a lot of my research on there as well. Call me.
Is there any red flags that you would look for right off the bat, other than knowing the players?
Time in business, that's a big one. It's not necessarily a red flag, but I want to know how long that franchise has been around. Not just the system itself, but the franchisor. Again, it could be a brand new franchise system, but if that franchisor has been very successful in other systems in the past, that makes me feel pretty good. And then I want to know how many, and really you do need a franchise disclosure document for this, how many people have left that system. You're going to get 1 or 2 or 3 that leave, right? Or a certain percentage. That's just the way that it is. Life happens. But if a lot of people are exiting, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you mentioned that, like if you think about this as a long-term investment and then you want to exit, I mean, there are rules to exiting a franchise too, isn't there?
Yes, and that will be very clearly laid out in that franchise disclosure document and in your contract. What do you need to do to transfer your franchise agreement? So if I were to sell my franchise tomorrow, there's a transfer fee that is laid out in my contract that I would have to pay. But here's the good news for the buyer. They don't have to pay a brand new franchise fee and all that. They just have to pay what I'm asking for the business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times my contract will transfer, meaning that if I sell my business, my buyer gets the benefit of my royalty rate, which is going to be less than whatever they're selling for now.
Right.
Because you're locked in, right? You're locked into that royalty rate, which you like. Some people are scared of contracts. I love contracts because it gives me, here's what it is. You can't change it. You can't change it later.
Right. Mary says, hey, Mary, that some prospects want to build a franchise on their property, but the location might not be right. So back to what you were saying about the franchisor has to agree to a lot of things before they let you do anything.
Right. Their success, your success is their success. Good franchisors don't get paid unless you are getting paid. So they are going to be very vested in making sure that you are picking the right location. They will work with you. They'll have the demographics and stats and data and foot traffic. And I mean, the amount of information they have is insane, but they'll also be relying on you as a local person in that market. Here's what we think. What do you think? It's definitely a joint relationship to help you become the most successful in that market.
Yeah. And so when you are a franchisee, in addition to just paying the fee to get in, you also have ongoing fees too, right?
Yes, you have your royalties.
Yeah. And so is there an average spread between the royalties that you have to pay? What would be a good or a bad royalty that you would want to look at?
This is so dependent on industry. That's hard to answer, like with just a number. It's really hard to say, well, 10% is enough or 20%. It depends on what you're getting for your royalty. That's always what it boils down to. I have a royalty payment, and particularly in my franchise, that's a little high. If you saw it, you'd be like, oh my, that's a high percentage. However, the legal support that I get for that, the contract rate I get I could never afford to do that on my own. What I pay my royalties for is pennies comparatively. That's really where I would suggest that someone do the investigation part. Is this worth it? How much would it cost me to do this on my own? And is a franchise deal a good deal or a bad deal based on that?
Okay. Interesting. I don't see any other questions. We're right at the top of the hour. So Amanda, I really want to thank you for joining us today. This has been really, really enlightening. You're a great speaker and this was some really good content. So I encourage everyone to reach out to Amanda, even if you don't want to, if you're not really thinking about looking for a franchise at the moment. Just kind of going through the process. You may change your mind, but hanging out with Amanda, you'll always learn a ton. And she's such a great resource and always so fun to be with. So
flattery gets you everywhere. So please keep coming.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much. And I'd like to remind everybody, we'll send you this recording later on today. And thanks for joining today. And thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love coming here and talking to working with the SBDC, and you guys have been so helpful in all of my businesses. So thank you so much for me and my family. You've made us definitely more successful than if we had tried to do this by ourselves.
Thank you. Okay, well, everybody, thanks for joining on another Toolkit Tuesday, and we will see you next week, I think. Bye, everybody.
Bye.